So last few nights, especially with the Olympics starting, and he's like, trying to find something interesting to watch in the Olympics. We've been channel surfing quite a bit, or more importantly, Amanda has. Just randomly what's on. And once you get past like the 100, you start getting into the children's TV, don't you? Mm-hmm. So in the evening, you get all that stuff that's supposed to help kids fall asleep.
Oh, yes, yep.
Oh,
right,
yeah,
in the Night
CBeebies, bedtime stories. Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
In the Night Garden, and there's another one. And every time this other one has come along, we haven't instantly switched over. We've been
is that... Oh, Mr. Onions. That's
Mr. Onions, that's it.
That's Moon and Me.
Moon and Me.
Yeah.
Onions.
Onions.
What are you
He's an onion.
about?
He's a big onion with purple trousers.
Of course he is.
Onions. And does he drive the tractor? He drives like a digger, doesn't he?
He has a little digger.
He's got a little digger that he drives around.
I don't know, Sid, have you started is Jay into Bluey by any chance?
Oh, Bluey's amazing.
Guys, seriously, check out Bluey. It's bloody brilliant. Bandit is like the best cartoon dad ever.
He's awesome. Dance mode creases me up.
This is brilliant. Considering this is for a children's TV show, the amount of stuff he says that's just slightly inappropriate is brilliant.
It's made by the Aussies and it's flipping superb.
It's amazing.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Cluttercast, episode 102. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
I'm Rory Summers.
Hello, gents. How you all doing?
Warm.
Yeah, it's a bit warm.
It's claggy, isn't
Claggy. It is claggy. There's a northern word for you. Claggy.
Claggy. Not too familiar with the word claggy.
It's a bit close.
When you get out the shower and you've kind of dried yourself off, but it's still a bit steamy, and you still need to wander around a little before you fully dry off, that's claggy.
Right, brilliant. Oh, so wish I wasn't picturing you out of the shower.
My mental image is even worse than that. I'm not sure I should share
Just
it.
talk about board games. Go.
Well, see, I'm trying to work out how much of this is like due to the heat. Well, obviously you're all feeling it to the heat, and how much of it is due to the fact that my arteries are probably clogged after this weekend.
Oh, yes. I was still eating those bastards this morning.
Yeah, we've still got one in the fridge.
I got sent home with a doggy bag. I had a half yesterday and a half this morning.
Rumi, what are you guys talking about? You're not literally eating bastards.
We didn't get a photograph of this, and we really should have. But it was Andy's birthday on Saturday, so we went to his to play some games.
Actually, but okay.
Oh, technically his birthday, so we went on Saturday. Went to Andy's to play some games. What does Andy want to do for his birthday? Play board games like a sensible person.
Exactly.
So we thought we'd treat... Well, me and Amanda went along and we popped into Stratford first, and we thought, we treat everyone. So there's going to be people there. We're going past Moore Bakery. We'll go get some cruffins. Now, if you haven't seen a cruffin, it's a testament to dirt. It is the icon on the pillar of the altar of dirt. It's a croissant dough, so that layered butter-filled dough, in a muffin tin. So it's cooked in a muffin tin, so you get a muffin shape. Smothered in sugar, because you have to have loads of sugar on these things, and then filled with either creme pat or some kind of cream. And they do like a cream and fruit. The shop we get them from.
Where does this? Which shop in Stratford, Steve?
This is Moore Bakery in Stratford upon Avon, and you have to get them before 10 o'clock because they run out at about 10 to half past.
There's no bloody chance of me doing that. Okay, never mind.
And they're huge. They're about the size of a pint glass kind of thing, these things are. So we rocked up with what we thought was 5 of us. Get one each, get 5 of them. We get there. What was your idea, Sid?
Well, I thought I'd pop into Mr. and Mrs. Fawn. I think it'd be, pick up a few treats for the boys and the ladies. I collected a few cruffins, a couple of cronuts, thinking, nobody else will be doing this. So we end up with an altar of patisserie, high-end patisserie.
Good.
I tell you what, it was magnificent.
I think all 5 of us were sat in a diabetic coma for about an hour after eating all that.
But it is good. I mean, how can you make a croissant better? And
Cheese.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
Cheese
Take
and
that
ham.
back. That's
cheese
a
and ham in a
disgusting
croissant.
thing to say.
No, cheese and ham in a croissant is quite magnificent.
Don't put cheese
makes
in anything.
Everything better.
Cheese
even
on a pizza,
cake.
fine.
Even
cheese in a
cake.
burger. get lost.
Cheesecake!
Can we talk about board game now? That's the second time Andy's upset me in the space of 5 minutes.
Well, it's not going to be the last. I even have it as a show note here. Annoy Rory.
Okay, back to board games then. I have to I'm going to make a public apology because I was supposed to have produced some kind of review of Villagers Shifting Seasons, which is the expansion for Villagers, and it was on Kickstarter, and Kickstarter finished about 3 or 4 days ago. And with all the episode 100 stuff and everything else that was going on in my life, I didn't manage to get any kind of review out for it, and I'm really, really bad for that, and I apologise to everyone, but I'm going to say now it's available for pre-order, so there's late pledges available on the Kickstarter page, and there's going to be a link to it in the show notes. So if you don't know, Shifting Seasons is a little expansion, I say little in size, expansion for Villagers. If you've played Villagers, what it does is it adds loads more stuff. It adds a bunch of new villager people to mix in with the decks, makes the decks a bit bigger, so a couple more trades. But the really interesting thing is what it does is the board has stacks of cards, and what you do is when you get to the bottom of certain stacks, the game triggers events. And in the normal game, it's on the 2nd and 6th stack, whereas the Shifting Season adds something to every single stack. So now the game is constantly doing subtle things that are different, all things that make you, allow you to score more points. And more interestingly, they've added a little bit of extra time to the round. One of the things that people complained about when they when the feedback went to the designer was that people felt the game was over too quick. So they've changed the numbers of cards in the deck just to make it a smidge longer, and apparently they've really playtested it and worked out that now it's at the right kind of peak length of the game to get everything you need done.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good expansion because it did that whole thing of adding more interesting stuff already, to the game rather than trying to redesign it or try and mix things up in a bad way.
Or just
like adding
add
cheese
more
to a croissant, for example.
Exactly.
You've taken a good thing and you've made it a little bit better.
Yeah, whereas this
worse.
is like adding creme pat to a croissant,
With cheese.
With
Cheesy creme pat. Is it like squeezy cheese?
cheesecake. If you put
that's
cheesecake
the worst
into the middle,
type of worst thing. Cheesy.
Squeezy cheese is pretty bad, I'm not going to lie.
it's pretty right, mate.
So now I kind of really wish we had done this review earlier, because then Dave could have put on the Kickstarter page Polyhedron Collider. It's like putting creme pat in a croissant.
That's about the 4th time in 2 minutes Rory's just sunk his head.
Hey, maybe we should have like a bingo sheet for that this week.
We should. Tick.
Another thing I want to quickly mention as well before we get into the board game proper, it's actually related to one of the questions, which we'll hopefully get to later. But David Meltzer asked us, he owns a PlayStation 4 and has Armello and Slay the Spire, and was looking for a PlayStation game that was much like these two. At the same time he asked this, I got an email off a random kind of video game publicist, which for some reason we've got onto their list, advertising a video game called Roguebook. I kept mentioning Richard Garfield's name in this, so if you don't know, Richard Garfield is the designer of Magic the Gathering, as well as a few other handful of board games. And they were giving away Steam keys, and I went, yeah, go on, now that's what it's like. And so I've had a few plays of this. And have any of you played Slay the Spire?
No.
Right, this makes it more difficult, but off we go. So Slay the Spire is like a deck builder video game. It's on Steam and GOG and all them. And Roguebook is basically that with a few extra things thrown in. So both games work in the same way in that you'll be in a combat situation, you fight against the baddie, and then you'll have a hand of cards, and the cards will be things like attack and defend, or special attacks and spells and that kind of thing. And you'll have 5 cards in your hand, I think it is, and you can cast 3 of them, but some of them have got different costs. But also at the same time, you know what the baddie's going to do. It tells you, like, this turn they're going to attack, this turn they're going to defend. So you've got an idea about, maybe I should spend my defend cards.
It sounds similar to, weirdly, the video game versions of Tainted Grail. Not the same, but similar.
Okay.
Because you have a hand of 5 cards in that, and you get to play 3 of them, or at least depending on how much they cost, but it's usually 3. And you face it's like a turn-based thing, so And then, you know, enemies will turn around and wallop you for X hit points, which you kind of know what's coming. So
yeah, that's almost exactly the same how Slay the Spire works. Yeah, so Roguebook works in a very, very similar way. Apart from in Slay the Spire, you are like one character and you have this one deck of cards, whereas Roguebook has more of a party approach to it and has a bit more of an exploration. So Slay the Spire has got, it's just, you take a path through the dungeon and every so often it'll fork, so you've got a choice of which direction you go. And every so often you'll get new cards to add to your deck, to add, you know, and then try and remove cards, just like a normal deck builder. Whereas Roguebook goes a little bit more complicated. You actually have a world you can explore, and you've got to actually explore around to find fights, to get the experience points, to buy the cards, to improve your deck before taking on the boss. If that makes sense. They're both really, really good games for like a kind of a 5-minute kind of, oh, you know, I'll just play this for a few minutes, but it's also good for sometimes you get a bit drawn in and think you've been playing it for 5 minutes, and in fact you've been playing it for half an hour, 2 hours kind of thing.
that's a good thing, though, surely.
It depends if you haven't got any other responsibilities for that day, really.
I see, right. Okay.
A very delicate way of putting it, Steve.
Yeah, I'll just play this for 5 minutes, you know, 2 hours later, there's a shout from downstairs, I thought you were cooking tea.
You thought wrong.
So yeah, I need to play both of them a little bit more, actually, because I'm struggling to find time to play too many video games at the moment. But yeah, David, I think that answers your question. I think if you really like Slay the Spire, Roguebook is one to look for.
There we go.
I have to say, gents, we're on fire this evening.
That's because we've got a stupidly long list of games and board games to talk about.
Did you guys play all of those games on Saturday, or most of them?
Yes, we did.
That's a lie.
Right, and gents, do you want to go into news?
Not really.
All right, let's go straight to board games.
There's a
Fine.
shitload of news this week.
But really, what's interesting in the news? Go on, Steve. Go on. You tell me what the headlines are.
Well, okay, then shall I just fire them at you?
Fire them at us and gauge from our reaction whether it's worth talking about.
Okay, so GameFound have announced a whole load of new projects coming out, including a sequel to Lords of Hellas.
Congratulations to them.
Yes.
And a Skyrim board game from Modiphius.
You pipe down. I'm all in for that.
Yeah, but
Not the Skyrim thing. I don't give two shits about that.
Skyrim from Modiphius.
Yes.
Oh, they did the TRPG, didn't they, a couple of years ago?
They did the miniatures game.
The miniatures game. And now there's a board game.
And now there's a board game coming, yes. And it's coming to GameFound and not Kickstarter.
All right, okay.
Yes. Well, that'll be... Well, Lords of Ragnarok makes sense because that's done by Awakened Realms. So that's just Lords of Hellas in a different coat.
Yes, Viking Lords of Hellas.
Yes. Vikings of Hellas.
So Cyber Vikings are us.
Yes.
And as you've already said, Andy will be going balls deep on that one, so no doubt we'll discuss that again.
I'm sure we will. The thing is, though, I really do have all of Lords of Hellas, and this is just going to be the same thing but with a different skin, despite Awakened Realms article saying, no, it's totally different mechanics. Yeah, whatever. We'll see. I mean, yes, you're right. I am going to back it, but...
Other major headline, I wrote this headline about 2 months ago, because it's before episode 100, in that TSR have returned, right? But since then... they've gone away again.
There we are, Polyhedron Collider, right on the nubbin and the cutting edge of news there.
So one of the Gygaxes, I can't remember, there's 2 Gygax songs. I'm not even going to remember his name because I can't be asked. He's obviously an arsehole. Well, no, they launched like the new TSR, which apparently at the time there were 2 companies called TSR. So if you don't know, TSR was the original name of the company that released Dungeons and Dragons. They released that they're going to make a new RPG studio called TSR, which is going to be doing this game called Giant Lands. Then they interviewed one of the Gygaxes about it. He said some things which were offensive in the interview, and then it was just a matter of watching this whole thing collapse. Like in the films when they've got those like pyramids of champagne glasses that they pour from the top, and the comedy character always takes one from the bottom. Yeah, that's the perfect analogy to what happened to TSR. Someone stacked all these things up. Someone registered the TSR name. Someone got out that big bottle of champagne with this Giant Lands game and started pouring it. Then one person involved in the company yanked out a bottle of glass from the bottom.
Nice.
And the entire thing went... Yeah.
Wonderful.
All right.
It collapsed quicker than a souffle in a bath.
Odd analogy.
What are you doing with a souffle in the bath, man?
Why would you know that would collapse a souffle?
It's made of sugar.
Mate,
It
a
would obviously
souffle
collapse in water.
collapses when you fart near it.
Well, exactly. So a bath would obviously have a greater enhanced effect. Don't think about this too hard. Just go with the analogy.
It doesn't make any sense. Anyway,
Next article.
Right, so TSR came back. TSR gone away. Okay, bye
Going
bye.
away, yeah, and most people now are not touching them with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
That's for the best.
Very appropriate link.
Wise.
Amazon and Asmodee are joining to sue game counterfeiters.
I'm sure that's
Nice.
going to end well.
Yeah. Well done.
Well, yeah, considering most of them are based in China who quite literally don't give a shit.
No, I can't imagine many people are answering the phone there, are they?
No, but we'll see what everything comes
See what
of that.
happens. That could be good news.
One thing that Andy it was interesting to talk about is Fantasy Flight Games are going to change the distribution model for their Arkham Horror LCG series.
Yes, they are. And this is vaguely
So what is
interesting.
the model at the moment? What's the model at the moment?
Well, the one that they've been going with for the last sort of 5 years or so is sort of small. They call it deluxe expansion. It's basically a sort of Wii. If you play Mansions of Madness, they come out in like really big expansions and sort of little Wii expansions. It's kind of the size of the Wii expansion.
Okay.
So that is the deluxe expansion. It's got about 150 cards in it, and it sets the scene for that particular what they call the cycle. So the set of releases. So there's either the King in there's Carcosa with the King in Yellow, or you've got the Forbidden Forest or whatever, Forgotten Isle, that's the one, or Innsmouth, or all of the sort of the scenarios that you've probably seen in Mansions of Madness and Dunwich and all that sort of jazz. But what would happen with that is over time they would release up to 6 additional what they call mythos packs, which are like basically sort of small card packs for about £15. There you go. My beautiful assistant is holding up one to the camera there.
No,
so it's like
Steve's holding.
That's a good point. Yes, you're right. Yeah. Followed by a middle finger. Very nice. Yeah, some chubby Welsh bloke is holding up some cards.
That's a bit cold, man.
Oh, Jesus. Andy is trying to piss off every member of PHC tonight.
Are you
You're
denying
next,
it?
I'm not denying
There
it.
you go.
It's
You're
perfectly
saying
right there.
you can't argue with facts because I'm a fat bitch as well. It's all
Can't
right.
wait till I'm in the crosshairs on this one.
Oh yeah, you don't get away with anything tonight. Anyway, the point is that 6 of these come out, and then you can buy the whole thing, and they all add like an extra chapter to the scenario. But as someone myself is relatively late coming to the party, as it were, I've started collecting some of these things, and they're a pain in the ass to find because as soon as they come out, everyone buys them up, and you can't find them until you get for a reprint. So what FFG are doing now, 5 years down the line, much to my consternation, is changing that model to basically say you buy the base box, which originally was only sort of basically for 2 players, but if you bought 2, you could have 4 because you have like 2 sets of cards. They're now making a bigger box that will have 3 characters in it, and a few more cards and a couple of extra bits and bobs, so it's a bit chunky. So it's more like the standard FFG expansion size box, like your standard board game box size. But on top of that, they're also releasing a new cycle, which is called The Edge of the Earth, which instead of having one of the smaller sort of boxes and then 6 more extra packs later on, they're basically wrapping all of that up to one big release, and you buy the whole thing in one go.
Okay.
So it's interesting. The thing is, though, one has to wonder if I want some of the expansions now. Do I wait? Are they going to get reprinted? Do I have to scrabble around the internet to try and find the existing Mythos packs, or do I just wait until they catch up? It's not too clear as to exactly what's going to happen. I suspect they're probably just going to go, no, tough, just carry on. But we don't know. It's unclear at this point in time exactly how it's going to pan out. But given that they're re-releasing the base box, I'm kind of holding out hope they're going to re-release all the other Mythos
All the
sets
Mythos,
as well.
but it'll be one box that you
One
get
box for
everything.
each one. Yeah.
Cool.
So they are saying that the game itself hasn't really changed. They've tidied up a couple of bits and bobs, but generally speaking, it's exactly the same game. So those of us with existing sets can still use the new stuff without
So
any
is it
problems.
like second edition 2.1?
Basically, yes. They're sort of LCG2 now, like pretty much, I guess, like the Dumb Mansions of Madness. So that's pretty much, as I understand it, that's what they're doing. So I suppose in a way it's probably easier. You just buy one big box in one lump rather than lots of different faffy packs over the time.
It's certainly much better in that regard. Buying those individual packs was a pain.
Yes, no, I agree, absolutely. I don't know exactly when this is going to kick in, but you can pre-order all of this stuff on our FFG's site, so I guess things are in print and will be released at some point in the near future. I'm guessing probably towards the end of the year, if it fits in with FFG's usual release cycle. We'll probably expect something around October time, give or take.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah.
Gen Con and then end of year seems to be their big release windows.
So,
yeah.
I mean, this is based on pure speculation. Not that we ever do that at Polyhedron Collider, but that is the guess.
So to round up the news, now again, this is another Kickstarter which ended ages ago, but I was going to delete it, but Andy read it and highlighted it. We got asked if we could talk about Dizzy Roseblade, the Dungeons and Dragons rap album.
No, the answer to that question is no, we cannot talk about it.
I concur. Move on. Jesus.
I think we can summarize it simply as it's a fella doing his thing. Just leave him be. Let him do what he's doing. He's having a good time. And that's the main thing.
It's a free country. You can do whatever you want. And if you can get people to support you, then great.
Hey, to be fair, they managed to bang out that cookbook, didn't they? As far as which was just random D&D names thrown at shepherd's pie and shit like that. So
oh god, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
True.
So they can put out pap like that. You know, this boy, he's not doing anything much different.
And good luck to him. He's hit his target, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's 3 times his target.
Fair play then, sir. Well done.
Nice.
I think, if I remember, I will try and close the episode with some of his musical stylings. Because if I put it in now, you might turn off the podcast now.
Might. Okay. Skip 30 seconds.
Right then, gents, let's talk about some games we played, because we played some games.
Played quite a few games. In
I
fact,
even
almost.
played some of the games with you. I went to your house and played games with you.
It was awesome. In fact, we've played too many games to talk about in one podcast. Good grief, we've been too efficient, boys.
It's been a while since we've had that many played.
So let's start off with Who Goes There? Andy or Rory, you know a bit more about this game. Explain it to us.
That is a good... That's a tall order, really.
Well, it's not that. It's a board game based on... Is it not Carpenter? It's not Carpenter.
No, it's the novella Who Goes There.
Yeah, but it's John Carpenter did the movie. Who did the book? I forget his name.
Not John Carpenter.
It's not Carpenter.
See, I've got his Carpenter in my head now. Now that you've planted that.
You are talking about the film The Thing.
The Thing.
From John Carpenter, based on the book or the novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell.
I knew it was another
That's the chap.
sounding name. Okay, right. So, Who Goes There? From The Thing that we'd all know about. It is, so you're set on the Antarctic base. You are a group of scientists, and the game starts kind of the morning after that you have unearthed an alien buried deep within the ice. Over the course of the night, while everybody's celebrating, "Ooh, we found an alien," this thing defrosts and just goes wild. You wake up in the morning and then you're on high alert. It's trashed the entire encampment. You have radioed in for a helicopter. It's going to come and collect you. You just need to batten down the hatches and survive the next 3 days without being eaten by this horrible beastie that you're only referring to as The Thing. And that's where the game starts. So it is kind of... There's a lot of action allocation. You are essentially going to different locations, collecting cards from decks to try and build equipment, or to try and find clues to help you navigate the helicopter home. All the while you're trying to defend your bunker, stop it from being broken, stop it from being attacked, and trying to make it through safely. Now, the great thing that I love about this game is that at some point during the game, someone will become infected. So there are these 12 little white snow cards, vulnerability cards, and at certain points through the game, players will have to take these vulnerability cards. They go into your hand, taking up space, and so everyone can see how many cards you've got, and one of them is marked with a blood splatter. If you have got the blood splatter card, you are infected. Your goal remains the same. You are still trying to leave Antarctica on the helicopter. But when you get on the helicopter, your plan is to try and eat the humans so that you can survive, get back to the mainland, where you can then run rampant and take over the whole world.
Simple stuff.
Simple stuff. That is the game in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Quite a romantic love story when you put it that way, isn't it, really? I mean, all the thing he wants to do is have a kiss. That's all he's up to. He just wants to hug.
Put his big tentacle tongue down your throat, Sid. That's it.
Yes, it's true. So yes, that's basically what happens, and then yes, so I think it's probably fair to say before we go any further, it is most reminiscent of games like Battlestar Galactica and who goes there, Jesus. So they are the obvious comparisons because they're all.
And I think Dead of Winter is the closest comparison because the main mechanics in Who Goes There are going to locations and picking cards from a deck to hope to find good stuff, which is exactly the same as what you're doing in Dead of Winter.
Yes, and you have equally good chances of finding good stuff, i.e. never.
Yeah, it's a really, really tough game. So inside, you've got 3 decks you can draw from. You can draw from the storage, which is where you're going to find stuff like food and medkits. You can go to the workshop, which is where you're going to find materials that is going to help you construct and build equipment that can go from a simple hatchet up to a big fire axe, and you can upgrade those pieces of equipment as you get them. And you get these little tokens that fit really nicely onto your board. Everyone's got this nice little player board. Everything slots in nicely. You've also got every character is very, very different, has a unique set of skills, and have got a unique deck. You can also draw from those. If you are the cook, for example, you've got a higher portion of food in there. If you're the medic, you've got more first aid kits. If you're McReady, you've got loads of booze in there to help you survive being out in the cold, and so on and so forth. Outside, you've got phases 1, 2, and 3, which are available over days 1, 2, and 3. Out there, you're going to find random pieces of equipment. You're going to find occasionally some good little booty cards. More often than not, you're going to find attacks with the thing or with a rabid dog. And what you're really after are helicopter cards, which are the bonus cards which you need to collect to get home.
Yes, because you need quite a few of those in order to be able to sort of get into the helicopter.
You do. I think I've worked out that on average every player needs to collect around 6.
Which, yeah, it's a lot.
6?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, but you've got the die roll at the end, which some could argue is a bit of a cop-out. But yeah, I think you need to, if everybody covered their own cost to get on the helicopter, you're going to want about 6 points.
Yeah, it's true.
Six means you're coasting, but if you could probably get away with maybe 3.
There are some +2s and +3 cards as well, so you don't have to have just
on
plus
later days.
ones.
Yeah, so phase 1 you can only get one helicopter point. Day 2, 2, and 3 and 3.
Yeah. Now I think
well as some others. Yeah.
The subtle difference between this game and Battlestar and Dead of Winter is that in Battlestar, you know for a fact there is a bad guy right at the start. At least one person is an enemy, so everyone's on sort of high alert to start with. And in Dead of Winter, there might be a traitor, there might not be. But there's still a bit of suspicion going around. The difference with Who Goes There is that you are all absolutely on the same side to start with. You are all completely cooperative, you're all completely human, and everyone is trustworthy, although we didn't believe that even right at the start of our games. Like, nope, you're dodgy. Sid, you're dodgy.
Turned out to be true, but
it did turn out to be true, yes. But the thing is, at the start of the game, it is supposed to be fully cooperative. Everyone's working together to try and get off the base and find as much food and stuff as possible. And then, obviously, the vulnerability cards start to get drawn, and then all of a sudden the knives start to come out, and the person with the 1 or 2 cards gets shunned like a leper and thrown out into the cold. And one of the mechanics in the game is during sort of the end of each day, you have to sleep. And the idea is you need to bunk with someone else to stave off the cold, which is interesting when you've got a 5-player game. So you're instantly, potentially at a disadvantage depending on which characters you play, because one of the characters has a dog.
So you take Clark. If you're playing 5 players, you take Clark.
Yeah, exactly.
But you still have to unlock Jack, the dog.
No.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's true, you do.
So,
so of course, you've got to wonder. And if you sleep on your own, you will be taking a vulnerability card because obviously the thing could creep up on you. However, if you sleep with someone who's already been bitten, and you don't want to get bitten there, do you, sweetheart? Then That's a brick top quote there. Then if anyone's been infected and you sleep with them, they could, although they choose not to, pass on their infection to you. So there's all this wonderful risk. So everyone's just pointing fingers and shouting and going, no, you're clearly dodgy. I'm going to stay inside and sleep with the dog or whatever it is, because there's just so much mistrust flying around. And I think that element of the game works really, really well.
Is brilliant. Yeah, hands down. I think the game can be, to not go into kind of the critique of it too much now, but it can be a little bit clunky. But I find that
a little bit.
At the end of each day, when you get to a sleep round, when you have to bunk, that I think is there's normally about 10 minutes spent. I've played this quite often at 6 players. We spend a good 10 minutes arguing, deciding, discussing who's going to bunk up with who, and that for me is what I really enjoy about this game. It's the atmosphere and the tension it creates between the players around the table rather than actually on the board itself. And then again at the end when you're trying to decide who gets on the helicopter, it's magnified there.
No, we
didn't get that far.
No,
we didn't get to the helicopter. We all died horribly well before then.
And that's another problem I have with this game sometimes, is that it is brutally hard. You can when people start dying, they just start dying and they just drop and drop and drop and drop.
Well, the problem we had is 2 of us fell unconscious, and then the medic went indoors for something, and we were unconscious outdoors, and then the door broke. So the medic couldn't get out, and then the medic fell unconscious. So there was like a mad scramble for someone to try and get to the storeroom to go get medic cars to revive the medic, by which point I think another person had died. It was just like, no, we're all dead
this
now.
massive cascade effect, it
was bad.
And then, of course, there's another deck of cards, the camp event cards.
Yeah.
Now, that's changed in 2nd edition, but I've played games of this where you have certain cards that come up which essentially say, right, in this turn, at some point, you have to deal with this event. It might be an avalanche. It might be the door has randomly taken damage. It could be the power's gone out. Various different things. And you have to deal with it. But some of them have a padlock symbol on it, which means the door is locked. So if you are outside, you are stuck outside. And if you're inside, you're stuck inside. I've had a couple of games where I've had maybe 4 or 5 of these doors locked on the trot, which means those people outside are absolutely stuffed, especially when they've burnt through that phase deck. So that they've just got no turn. They've just got nothing to do. They can't, because we've burnt through the deck. And they're just stuck outside, just getting cold, just trying to roll for experience, because that's all they can do. And it's at that point it gets quite dire. And then those people that are stuck inside going, I need to get some XP so I can unlock more of my board. The only way I can do that is to get outside, and all I'm doing, I'm stuck inside making scarves. Yes.
Sat by the boiler doing crochet.
Doing some crochet. Are those guys back inside? Yeah, they must be cold.
Drinking booze.
I understand 2nd editions resolved that by having keys, so you can just unlock the door.
You can go through the locked
but they're not guaranteed. They're still part of the equipment deck, which I think is in storage. So even if you are outside, you can't search through the phase decks because they still won't give you a key. So it doesn't solve it completely. Now the character I was playing actually could roll a key on his little sort of locker die. But of course, you're still rolling it up to chance. So it's not guaranteed. Now the biggest issue Steve and I had was a lot of the rules in the game are really quite unclear, because some of them are fairly clear, but one of the biggest problems we had was that how many strikes can a certain character take? Now, the assumption is 3, because that's when you pass out. But exactly what happened to us is if you're unconscious outside and there's a temperature drop at the start of a new round, if you have no stamina left, which happens after three turns of being unconscious outside in the cold in the Antarctic, you're supposed to get a strike. But you think, well, hang on, do I have another strike, or do I just stay at 3? What happens? And I cannot find an answer anywhere. So
I thought you never exceeded 3 wounds. 3 is the maximum you can take.
It doesn't say anywhere.
We couldn't find that.
We couldn't find that anywhere.
I would argue the toss in a really odd way here. I would say that the rule book is very clear about all the rules. However, all the rules are not exactly where you'd think the rules would be in the rule book.
It's really, yeah, it is really badly laid out. It's a terrible rule book.
I think they've actually, in some ways, they've done a really good job. Here's the rule. Here's an example. Here's what it looks like on the board, and that's and they do that a lot throughout the whole rule book. But they're just not in the. They're not in a sensible place.
No, I agree. I agree with that.
Which means that when you are going, where do I? What when you're looking for a rule like that in the middle of a game, you're just kind of a bit lost.
Yes, but the thing is, I mean, the boiler and the door can take more than three strikes, which kind of implies players could.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
It was one rule we couldn't find at all in the rule book, and me and I were looking at it because, of course, me and Andy were unconscious, so we weren't doing it. Between us, we were looking for the rule book, trying to work it out, and it keeps showing you pictures of 3 strikes. But it's like, where does it say 3? Couldn't find it.
Okay.
And there was other things like that where either we suddenly found a rule on the little reference sheet,
Yeah.
or rules had so many exceptions to them. You were like, well, it felt a bit clunky in a lot of aspects, I thought.
Yes, I don't disagree. I think it needs a 3rd edition rule book. Maybe not a 3rd edition set of components, because it's a very, very lovely game.
It needs a 3rd edition player board.
You think?
Yeah.
What's wrong with the player boards?
Well, there's this big picture. Yeah, you got the picture of your character.
Yeah, no.
Right, you've got this huge picture of your character, which is just like a dumping ground for all your cubes and stuff when you're not in play. Just give us an active area and a dead area, so once you've spent your cubes, you can put them somewhere that's out of the way or where they're fresh. You know, it's a lovely board, but a little bit more, just to tidy up, give you like a little bit on the edge and a few more like rule hints or something like that. It just needs a little bit on that player board.
Well, the intention is you put the cubes into the action area at the top. The problem with doing that is as soon as you put cubes into it, you can't see what the actions are.
If that's
annoying.
The point, number one, make it the right size for a row of cubes, and then don't put text I fucking need underneath where my fucking cubes are.
That is fair, yes.
But yeah, I mean that's similar to the problem with the root player board, though, isn't it? You go, get my root player board and go, right, how do I set this up? It's underneath the player board. You know, it's
like
you're right, though, Sid. You're right. It holds really key information, especially when you are new to this game. You've actually got quite a few actions that you can do, and depending on where you are, you can do certain actions here, and you get this bonus, and you get this here. But yeah, as soon as you put your cubes there, you then can't see it. Yeah,
and then you start putting them off your player board, and then you forget to maybe use them or put them over, and it was such a small thing because it is a nice player board. It is very nice, and it's almost spot on. I'd say it's almost there, but it's not quite there.
Yeah, I think it needs some of the rough edges sanding off it, I think.
Yeah.
I think some of the decks of... I would like to see some of the decks of cards thinned out a little bit. Yep. I don't know... One of the big problems I have with this game is that you are... I've played this several times now at 6 players with the same group of people, and I think the rules are quite straightforward. How you need to operate as a team to play this takes a little while to get your head around, because the way you play is not kind of described to you in the rule book, if that makes sense. You need to really have this massive cohesion between the team really, really early on. But what you can't have is any players becoming superheroes. Yeah. If you get one character who just goes, right, brilliant, I've got this jacket, which means it's only going to cost me 1 action to search a deck, and they just burn through the deck, and I've got all these weapons now, so I can kill the thing, and they get all the helicopter cards. Well, you've got all the helicopter cards, brilliant. You've also got a couple of vulnerability cards, and but you've got no food, and you need to sleep. Well, I've got all the food because I've just been stuck inside. You have this massive disequilibrium between players because your specialism forces you down one route, or the cards you start with force you down a particular route, and it's really hard to break out of that to get more XP, to get outside, to get the coats, to get the weapons, to improve yourself. You end up almost just getting pigeonholed. And I think it takes a few plays of the game to really understand you have to force yourself to diversify so that you can play an equal part of this game. And you can just get these players that just become runaway leaders. And that's great if they're on your side. But if that runaway player, my last game, the runaway player was the thing. So we had this massive argument at the end of the game as if we are human, if we don't take Jav, if we don't take him on the helicopter, we lose because we haven't got enough points. He's got all the points. But if we do take him, and at this point I was convinced, and he's the thing, we lose. So I mean, what do we do?
Either way.
But we played through the entire game, and we had this great debate about it. But and every time I've played it, you've ended up with one player which has just become a runaway leader. So they're not really quarterbacking as such. They've just become more powerful, and they can then dictate the end of the game more than anybody else.
I think that touched on another interesting thing that we spoke about after the game, and that was the unbalanced nature of the characters. Like you just said it there, if you don't know your characters and you don't pick the right mix of characters, you're going to make your game turbo difficult or turbo easy. Like we had no cook. So basically, food was rocking horse shit. We were burning through card after card after card in all the decks, and we just never got any food.
No,
so as soon as the food round came up, we were guaranteed to get vulnerability cards, pretty much.
Which is kind of the point, but I think it was to excess. It was too hard.
We couldn't find them. We just, we kept hitting decks, and we kept hitting our own decks. We kept hitting the main deck. Maybe we just got a bad shuffle. I don't know.
I think the game has been designed around the base 4 characters, because it is originally essentially the base 4 characters you get with the base game, and then you can add some more if you want to. And you've got Commander Gary, like the leader with the gun. You've got McCready. You've got Kinner and Cooper. The Cooper, or Copper, as he is in the game. Yeah. So you've basically got the medic, the cook, the
firearms,
and
the leader.
The leader. So basically, you essentially got all 4 bases covered. So you should be able to survive, and then you can add to it. Now, of course, we didn't. I just went, here are 16 or 12 character boards. Go hog wild and knock yourself out. Nobody chose the cook. Nobody chose the leader. So we had no guns, no food. So we were always up against it. But I think it would be quite helpful if the game, again, in V3, if it ever exists, would state, right, for your first few games, make sure you have these 4 characters at the very minimum, and then add to it, because otherwise you are going to struggle if you don't know what you're doing.
See, I really want to play it again. I mean, I thought I was a bit I was a bit miffed by it once we'd finished it, because I thought, well, how the f*** are we supposed to play this game? Basically, Rory, for most of the game, none of us crafted anything. Right,
no.
So none of us had any items, right? So we got to day 3, and by day 3 we're rolling 3 dice, we had to roll 3 successes.
Yeah,
half of us only had 2 dice.
Yeah,
one of us or 2 of
the
us.
other half was in the
other half had 1. I think I occasionally had 3 if I drunk my booze quick enough, right? Yeah. And it was like, well, we're never gonna win in day 3, and what happened is we died. We died in day 3, and it's because I think we didn't trade enough. In the first day when everyone was fine, we were still like, as Andy said earlier, we were very much like, I'm not trading with you. I might catch cooties off you. I was like, what were we thinking? I mean, we were all fine, and not one of us really wanted to work with each other. So I think we just completely pumped it.
I think it has this really difficult decision you've got to make. Actually, early on, do I want to go outside and start getting some XP so I can unlock the extra action, the extra stamina, my locker dice? Can I unlock these things on my board to make myself more powerful and potentially find some gear, but also might get infected? Or do I stay inside and rummage through the workshop and try and craft some items so that I'm prepared that way? And you've got that where you start and what you do early on, but what you really need to do, you need to switch. So if you go outside and start looking for those helicopter points early on, you come back inside, and then I go outside, and you have to do that so everyone gets a fair share of it. And if you don't do that, you end up with runaway characters or people that are just like, right, I've got all I can do this turn.
We didn't play to our party strength. So like I had McCready, so I went outside and I was ransacking and pillaging because I had the alcohol that let me be outside and get my stamina back. So it was a no-brainer. My character should have been outside ripping boxes 100%, open.
Yeah.
So I was doing that. But at the same time, what I should have done, thinking back on it, is made like a reciprocal agreement with somebody inside. So they were ransacking and building, and then we could have traded some items. They could have built me a coat, and I could have given them stuff that I found in the boxes.
This is the thing is you can't trade items though, once they're made. So you have to come inside,
to trade
and then you go, right,
buildables.
Those are the cards, and then you have to have that cooperation, but you can't give them XP.
No.
Yeah, I think what happened is everyone saw their board, which said, get some XP to unlock all your cool stuff on your board, and everyone piled outside to get XP.
Yes.
And that's why I think I said a player target, everyone should aim for 6 helicopter points. But really, if it was when you get to a team, it's actually Steve and we're going to have that trade system, that trade agreement. Steve, you need to cover my helicopter points because I'm not going to get outside as much as you are. I'm going to get the equipment. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to myself so that we can survive. But you need to cover my ticket on the helicopter. Mm-hmm. And I think you need that. But that isn't made very clear in the rule book of this is how you need to play. You need to play, everybody die. You need to play, and then it all goes Pete Tong. You need to play this game 3 or 4, I think maybe 3 times before it really, this is how we need to do it. Yeah. Problem there is that a game of this, I'm normally playing this for about 3 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a surprisingly long game, actually. I mean, I don't think I've played it, and I still haven't finished playing it. I've not still got to the helicopter run yet, and we were playing for, 3 or 4 hours on Saturday. I mean, I've got to the end of day 2, and it's still 3 hours in. It's insanely long.
And I enjoy it, and I think that we have a lot of debate and a lot of banter and a lot of discussion throughout playing it. I play this with guys where I'm not even having to teach them anything anymore. Everybody just goes, which is great. And it still takes 3 or 4 hours.
I think it's a bit too long.
Yeah, that could be its downfall, couldn't it, though? Because that's a lot of time to invest if you're getting annoyed by it.
And then, to go, right, actually, no, like I say, we got to the almost the helicopter round, and now everyone's dead.
Yeah. Oh, that's 3 hours of my life I'm not getting back.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think I'd like to go back.
You get that in other games, don't you, as well? Was it Eldritch?
Yeah,
Eldritch Horror. I mean, I've only played that once round at Steve's house. We played that for a few hours, and I think everybody died in that. You can do it. You can do it in Pandemic as well, but obviously you play that for 30 minutes and everybody dies. You think, wow.
Well, Battlestar Galactica, which we referenced earlier, that's a 3-hour game.
That's
usually.
True, yeah.
And yes, and that can go. However, the interesting thing about that is you play a 3-hour game. If that ends because everyone's died, then the Cylons have won.
Yeah.
So at least there is someone has won that, whereas this felt like, well, everyone lost. Yeah.
So, let's I suppose wrap this up. I love Who Goes There and would very happily play it again should I ever have 4 hours free. Steve, would you play this game again?
I want to play it again to give it a second chance, but there is now a part of my head which is like, well, I also kind of at the moment there's nothing about it which is jumping Battlestar Galactica, pushing it off that top spot.
Right.
If that makes sense.
What about you, Sid?
So I want to play it again. However, I now want to play Dead of Winter and Battlestar first. Because you guys have all told me they're awesome, so I want to go and play them, and then maybe circle back and play this again. I had fun, I enjoyed it, but I'm not desperate to go back and commit 3 or 4 hours of my life to it again. Not too soon, anyway.
And Andy, you own all of these games. If we were going to come around and play a Hidden Traitor game, which one would be your first pick then?
Battlestar.
Battlestar.
Yeah. I like Who Goes There. I do like the paranoid mechanic. But I don't think, for the length of game it is, I don't think there's enough meat in it. I think it's a bit more, I'm just going to go here, draw some cards, next player, draw some cards, next player. And that's basically all it is.
If only with a little bit fast.
That's the problem, though. It really should be, because there isn't that much more to it, weirdly. I mean, it's really well presented, don't get me wrong. It's absolutely beautiful. The artwork's great, the miniatures are lovely, all the components are fantastic. Bloody should be for the price. But, it's a really well put together game. It just isn't as good as the other two.
Do you not think?
No.
Fair enough. Right.
But I do love the paranoia bit. That works really, really, really well.
It's great. I love this game. I really, really like this game a lot. I know it's not a perfect game by a long stretch, but I just think I've had some really great experiences playing this game. Like really great experience playing the game.
I would happily play it again. Don't get me wrong. I did enjoy it, and I would like to play it again correctly next time. Because obviously there was a little bit of learning the first time we played it. But yeah, given the 3, if somebody sat me down, right, you've got 3 or 4 hours to play one of these 3 games, which one would it be? Battlestar would be my answer.
Fair enough.
But if somebody said, Andy, do you want to play Who Goes There? Yes, I would.
I will add one other thing. I want to play it with Rory, because that passion is the sort of shit that needs to rock up in that game, I think. Because that would make it far more interesting and far more exciting if you're playing with that level of enthusiasm, man.
I tend to take Commander Gary, and I actually take my commanding role quite seriously.
Oh, okay.
Right, I'm telling you, this is what you're going to do, Sid.
See, I think that's
That
where we
would,
went
that's
wrong,
probably
Steve.
what it needs.
We
That's probably what it
basically
needs.
Sid ended up as the camp leader because he was like McCready, had like a
let Sid
rating.
be in charge.
Well, you
Bad
see, this
idea.
is the mistake we made. He was an unwilling leader. So basically, we were let down by poor leadership. That's what happened.
Oh, whoa.
That's what happened. Yeah, it's not a bad game. It's
I
poor
was the
leadership.
That's
baddie.
what it is.
My mission was to eat you. You didn't want me on the helicopter.
But we didn't know that at the start.
I was looking after
Okay.
I was looking out for my team. I just didn't want to put you in that position of having to shoot me in the face.
So that was Who Goes There.
Certifiable Studios.
But another game we've managed to play, and which unfortunately Sid, you're the only one who didn't manage to play this one, aren't
No, I was somewhere else, and I can't remember
you? You
where.
were somewhere else. No, we managed to play a game of Dune Imperium, the other three of us,
We
which
did.
is Direwolf Digital, and it is set in the new, I'm going to say the new Dune universe, because they've obviously got the rights to it from the new film that's about to come out about September, October time.
Which does look good.
Finally, and the trailer does make it look freaking awesome. And it is a deck builder and worker placement game combined,
Yep.
which is quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Not competitive, but
Adversarial?
Adversarial, that's the word I'm looking for. That many other worker placement games are not. So you are, of course, I mean, all Dune games have the same theme. You are fighting over the desert planet of Arrakis. And you will be doing this by hiring individuals. These hired individuals are basically cards that are in your deck, and you'll be placing workers, agents on a board in which to activate actions. The action spaces you can go to depend on the cards you play. So what it does is it links this deck building and worker placement together at the same time. So it's not just a case of I can go anywhere. You're limited to the places you can go based on the cards you've got in your hand, and you play them to go to a space. And you know, like in like every single deck building game has the kind of like money resource or another resource. You then can't use that card for those other actions of those resources. You can't use them to buy more cards, and you can't use them to gain power in other ways. You've also got this aspect in the middle of the board, which is every round there's going to be some kind of fight, and there's going to be a reward based on where you are positioned. So in a 4-player game, the rewards for first, second, third, and fourth place, basically. You might not get a reward for fourth, but generally they're going to be victory points. They're not always victory points, but generally they're going to be. And during the round, you have to move troops into your barracks, move troops, and then move troops out of your barracks into the battlefield. And at the end of the round, you score up scores for how many troops you've got in the battlefield and how many daggers you've got in the cards at the end of the round. And whoever wins then gets the points. The other main way of getting victory points is, just like all good Euro games these days, there are several tracks up the left-hand side. You'll play certain actions. Every time you play one of these actions, you'll go up a track. Go up enough points on the track, you'll get a reward. Go up enough points, you'll get victory points. And what is quite interesting in this game is it's one of those games where I think it's I can't remember if it's 10 or 12 now off the top of my head. That's the victory point limit. If someone hits that in a round, you go to play to the end of the round, and that person wins. And you can lose victory points. Because you can be put down tracks. So if you go down the track and are no longer have it on the victory point space, you can lose victory points. And you can effectively steal victory points off other players in that way. So we had an interesting thing at the end where Andy and Laura were basically in a fight, and it was basically depending on what cards they played, one was going to end up winning by stealing the victory points off another player, by basically knocking one player down one track and themselves up the other track. And of course, Andy was more vindictive and managed to get away with it in the end, if I remember correctly.
That is absolutely correct, yes. Much to the
I would
consternation.
also add that Andy was also quite manipulative in triggering me to do certain actions to benefit himself. Very
of
clever,
course.
very well done.
Of course.
Well, which is in keeping with theme for the Dune universe,
Absolutely
isn't it?
right,
You know, it's all
yes.
about backstabbing houses, you know, and being manipulative and all that.
Not a nice
straight.
place.
I was quite proud of that victory, actually. Yes, I mean, I'm not really sure what else I can add other than it was bloody brilliant.
I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I think I found myself over the next couple of days that just idly walking the dog in the morning and going, I should have done this on that round, and I should have done. But days later, just thinking about the very specific details of this and this and that, it was I really enjoyed it. And if I played it again, which I really want to, I would play it very differently. I kept almost forgetting that there's the link between the worker placement and the deck building. It is. I was doing the worker placement bit, and as you have to do, but I wasn't really concentrating on building my deck to be a cohesive deck, to have a lot of synergy in there. I think because we were all a bit new of it, I was going, that looks like a powerful card. That looks like a cool card. That card's really expensive. It must be good. I was doing that, and I think what I will do next time is these cards will work well together. I had some cards in my deck which would only work under this circumstance, and I was like, well, because the card has a dual use, doesn't it? You can do this if you keep it to the end to play it as points, and you use this if you play it with a worker.
Yes.
So yeah, that was the other thing. Some of the cards that you needed the card to go to certain spots. Well, some cards would also give you a bonus if you used it to activate a worker placement spot.
So I had some of these cards, but the conditions that where I would get all of these really cool bonuses, I didn't meet those conditions. And by the time that kind of really clicked in my head, there was no way for me to get those conditions. So it's like, well, that's just almost a wasted card. I can only use it for this now. The one thing I would add, though, having not watched the Dune film since I was a very, very wee nipper, and having not read the book, and not being a fan of it at all, as much as I claim to be a geek, I am not. The theme didn't come through in this board game at all. It could be reskinned as any sci-fi, any fantasy, it could be reskinned as a naval orchestration. It could even be reskinned as a shopping game for the amount that theme came through.
I said exactly the same thing before we began recording. It's so true. It really is.
We're almost word for word.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely word for
Although
word.
I now want Supermarket Sweep the Euro game.
Definitely, yes, with a big picture of Dale,
Big Dale Winton in there, is it?
That's it, yeah.
That's it. Take the card that's got Dave Bautista on it on this new one. Take him off and put Dale Winton
I'm
on.
really disappointed that you guys have said that.
I can't disagree with him there, actually, Sid. But it's the same way in which Lords of Waterdeep. It's like a D&D worker placement game, and it's all set in Waterdeep, and it's all, everything you're doing, if you know the setting, links really well, all the places. But as you said, it's a name on a place. It doesn't feel like you're doing that thing. And I think Dune Imperium is just like that. If you know Dune, you know why you're going to this place. You know what the Bene Gesserit are, so why the Bene Gesserit does this effect in the game works. But if you, as I said, if you like rowing and are not that plussed about it, it is just a generic space that gives you +1 bonus on X kind of thing, or that allows you to the cards. So it's one of those weird things. I put exactly the same caveat as I do with Lords of Waterdeep for that exact same reason. If you know the setting and love it, you'll get all this extra stuff out of it. If you don't know the setting, you're not going to feel like you're battling over spice.
Yeah.
I'm just battling over the orange hexagon cube wooden pieces.
Yeah.
That's I just.
The bees,
can I have
beeswax.
some more of those orange ones, please, or the blue ones? Thanks.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just colours
But
of cubes.
I would say it is still a brilliant game.
Yes, it is.
And you get an extra bonus from it if you are a fan of Dune. Yeah.
That's kind of that feels like somebody's just skinned it up so they can make some more money off of the base game.
I think it happens with a lot of games, though. I mean, I'm reminded of Mistborn House War in some regards, although they're very, very different games. But it's just like, here's a game I've created, and I'm going to put it on the shelf next to the Mistborn books and hope the theme just rubs off onto it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there you go. There it is. And as if you don't know Mistborn, you could play this game and go, that was a shit game with some interesting artwork. And if you do know Mistborn, you go, that was a shit game, but it had Mistborn on it, so it's kind of cool.
Well, I got two perfect examples of this, and they're both Board and Dice games from a few years back. So Board and Dice did a game called Multi-Universum, which is a card game. It's almost like a trick-taking game where you go to places and you collect certain tokens to close portals. And it's got some beautiful artwork, and it's got all these like alternative universes in there with weird things happening. And I was told the game was originally about delivering pizza.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't guess that from playing it at all. Also, Board and Dice, another game which I can always never remember the Upside Down, which is kind of the Stranger Things kind of game.
It's a great game.
John really loves it as well. It's a game in which you are constantly balancing back and forth between the real world and the underworld, and it's tipping about. Apparently, the game was originally about 14th century Polish kings.
Fair enough.
True, 100% true. It's brilliant how you just.
It's bonkers because the game feels like it was written to be this like kind of Stranger Things underworld game right from the very start, but no, it wasn't. It was rethemed in development.
Unlike, to go in Upside Down, in between, whatever it's called, in between. So when you're playing in between, mechanically you get the theme. The theme of it comes through in those mechanics, whether it was what it was designed for or not. It really it has that feel of the good versus bad, chaos versus order. It has that real feel of it, and you got that feel through the mechanics, so it comes through. With Dune, it was these are the mechanics in a really, really good game, and that theme is just sat next to it.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
But again, here's a perfect example. Dune, the board game, which is the old 70s board game, which recently got reprinted about 5 or 6 years ago as Rex.
Yes.
And it's an area control game, it's a battle game, and it just got completely rethemed into the Twilight Imperium universe because Fantasy Flight Games couldn't get the Dune license at the time, but could get the license for the rules.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example of how it's really how this happens.
It's really kind of how loosely theme and mechanics are disconnected. Yeah. In theory, it's going to happen with Battlestar Galactica, didn't I hear? There's a rumor because they've lost the license to that, but they want the game's really good, so they take mechanics and just put it into this whatever, probably sci-fi.
It's an Arkham horror setting. So basically, what's going to be is instead of it being a sci-fi setting, you are on a ship traveling through the Arctic. So it's like at the Mountains of Madness, and so Dagon and all his people attacking, and rather than it being Cylons, you're going to be Deep Ones. So somebody is a Deep One pretending to be a human and is trying to sabotage the ship. And it looks beautiful, though. You should see the artwork.
I just really wish that FFG would change the tune, to be honest.
You say that, but I can see that the FFG at the moment have obviously got, these are the settings we've got full control over, so that's what we're going to put all our games into now. Because everything is either the Netrunner setting, not Netrunner, Android setting, Terranoff, which is their fantasy setting, Arkham Horror, and then you've got the licenses like Star Wars and the Twilight Imperium for their sci-fi. So it's obviously they're trying to avoid these expensive licensing and put everything into these settings.
Still.
So that was Dune Imperium. I think we'll probably mention it again because I have a funny feeling we're going to play that again because we all really enjoyed that game. Didn't we?
Got 2 thumbs up from me.
Yeah, really, really good.
How much was it, Steve? Just roughly, if you don't mind.
I don't know what the RRP is, but I think I paid about £45, including postage, which is about the going rate for a board game these days, isn't it?
Just
I'd say I think that's going rate for a cheap board game these days.
I think that's. I don't really think it's worth £45 personally.
Well, have you seen they've also offered deluxe upgrades?
What?
There is a deluxe upgrade kit for that
upgrades box. What? I mean, it's got those nice.
It turns the tokens into like a little sandworm and little troops instead of little cubes.
Of course it does.
That kind of thing. And they've just announced an expansion for it as well. So there's 2 expansions out for that already.
All right.
An upgrade and a real expansion. But anyway. We've got loads of questions, but before we get to the questions, I want to do a relatively quick review of an RPG that I've been playing, because we were sent a review copy of this, and that game is called Against the Darkmaster. Now, I know none of you have played this, but Sid sat in and watched a couple of our sessions. So Sid,
who else are you playing with?
We've got an RPG group of 10 people now.
Right. Okay. I'm so out of the loop. I was so offended, and then I realised it's my own fault for having children.
Yeah. And apparently you're playing in 3 D&D campaigns at the moment, so I don't know what you're complaining about.
Yeah. Don't make us feel guilty. You're playing
well, you guys don't even want to play D&D. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, we were invited to your group, weren't we, you dickhead?
I could do 4.
Against the Darkmaster is actually a kind of remake of Middle-earth roleplay, which is an old Lord of the Rings setting RPG from the 80s, which I vaguely remember because I'm pretty sure I played this in the early 90s at some point. I think. Things are hazy. I'm pretty sure I made a character, and that's all I can really remember. It's a kind of a generic fantasy setting, but what they've done is made a central villain. It's called Against the Darkmaster, because everything in the game will go against one big bad, which is the Darkmaster. So, of course, in Lord of the Rings, it's your Sauron. Whereas in this, you can create your own. It gives you a couple of example ones you can do, but it gives you a whole list of how to create your own. And it's a really minor point, but the whole book's black and white. So it's all white pages, black text.
Nice.
Apart from the Darkmaster pages, which are negative, so they're all black pages with white text.
Oh, nice.
It's a really minor thing, but it looks so beautiful in comparison.
And they're right in the middle of the book as well, so it does look kind of cool. When it's actually a real copy, it's the middle page of the book. There's just a black stripe right down the middle of the book. Ooh, it is a small thing,
touch.
But it is kind of cool.
Touch.
Whoa, that is a big book.
Right,
well, there's a reason for that
as well. There's a reason for this. So, this is a complete. Think of this in your D&D terms, the point of view of this being the player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster's Manual in one. So it's it's a complete rule system. It's got everything in there, and as I said, it's got your basics of the game of a rather. It sounds generic, but it's generic Tolkien-esque fantasy. You've got your elves, you've got your dwarves, you've got a whole variety of elves and dwarves, actually, a few different classes to choose from, but you've also got some interesting other races, like you can play a troll and you can play wild people and things like that. Where this game is interesting is how the mechanics work. So, it's called the D100 system, because funnily enough, it relies on a 100-sided dice. And normal skill checks are relatively simple. You'll roll a D100 and you'll add your skill to it. Score 75 or more and you have a partial success. Score 100 or more and you have a full success. And there are a couple of like critical failures and critical successes after that. Just to emphasize that point, you need to roll 100 or more on a 100-sided dice to succeed at any one test.
When you add your skills to this, so do my skills range from like 20 to 60, or are we talking?
No, we're talking like 5 to 30 at first level. As things get more difficult, you actually add a penalty to that as well. So difficult tasks have a negative effect. So they might minus 20 from that roll or 30 from that roll.
Right.
So right from the very beginning, at first level, basically this game goes from kind of 1 to 10. You're going to only get partial successes. A full success is going to be a bit of a miracle.
Completely out of your reach, yeah.
Oh, not completely out of your reach, but it's also got exploding die. So if you roll a 95 or more, you get to re-roll and add that result.
Okay.
So there is like the critical successes in it do add loads more. Combat, however, is where things are interesting.
That's not the word I'd use.
Well, I think anyone that listens to this podcast for any time, when Steve says interesting, it means anything but interesting.
True.
Combat is very similar. Again, a D100 roll, you add your combat bonus, which is basically a bonus based on your weapon and your skill. Oh, sorry, I'll go back a bit. Let's do the combat round first, because combat round, compared to almost every single RPG we played, is a bit nuts. It has a set order. So people move first, then prepared magic goes off, then prepared ranged attacks go off, then melee attacks happen in the order of weapon length. So the longest weapons go first, so spears go first, daggers go last.
Full of innuendo, love it.
Yep. And then like instant magic and ranged attacks happen. So for instance, magic works better if you prepare the spell and spend time casting it. So basically one round you'll be casting it and the following round you'll let it go. So casting the fireball is not boom, fireball, it's casting spell. Next round fireball. And you can try and the same goes for the ranged attacks. You can hold your aim and try and aim, and the more rounds you spend holding it, the bigger the bonus you get.
Cool.
The actual combat itself is, again, roll a D100, add your combat bonus to it, and minus the enemy's defense. You then consult a table, and there is a table for every single type of weapon. When I say type, it's like bladed, blunt, edged, stabbing, fire, that kind of thing. That table has columns for all the different armour types, so no armour, light armour, medium armour and heavy armour, and you'll find your number, go down the table and read the results.
Cool.
That result will give you your basic damage if you've hit and got past their armour, and then will tell you if you've got a crit. And there are various grades of crit, and what the very grade of crit means, you go onto the critical table for that kind of weapon.
Of course.
Roll another d100, add a bonus depending on whether you've got like a higher level of critical, which does something else beyond normal damage. So simple things might be, you know, it causes bleed damage. You've got a cut which bleeds, or it might be you've stabbed them in the eye, so they can't see as well, or you might be they've broken their knee, so now they can't move as far. Magic has similar things. So magic, for instance, if you cast a fire spell, isn't just fire damage. You'll go onto the fire critical table and roll to see what happens on there.
So there's a lot of looking up tables in this book.
There is a metric ton of looking up tables in this book.
You need a sharp pencil and an abacus, as far as I can work out. Because you might as well have something slow like that, because a calculator would be outpaced by the fact you've got to flick through the book.
We played it online. However, at the time of playing, there are no virtual tabletop systems ready for
to support it. So it is just
support it. There is now. I think Foundry has now got
one,
like one set up for it. Someone's wrote. So we did it pen and paper. We just used Roll20 to roll the dice. That was all we did, and did everything pen and paper. And yes, there's a lot of this guy's using a spear. Right, that's in the pointed table for attack. Roll attack. Oh, we've got a crit. What kind of crit has that spear got? Because it's not necessarily, it's not one for one. It might be a different crit, and some weapons have multiple crit types, so you've got to choose which type of crit you want to do. So yes, there is a lot of looking up tables.
This sounds like, from what we talked about in episode 100, like the new age roleplay games where it's fast and it's exploding and its combat is dynamic. This seems very backwards. It seems like a really big step back.
As I said, this game is based on Middle Earth roleplay, which is 40 years old.
Okay.
And although you can tell that a lot of effort has been put updating the style, the artwork, everything that holds it together, even sanding down the rough edges a little bit of this table system, that was the central core thing of this system. So they've kept that.
Okay.
And as subsequently it does mean, yes, it's very clunky. No, what it does mean is combat can be deadly and very unpredictable.
Okay.
There's broken bones, people are being knocked off horses, and their tendons being severed. The crits make it interesting. It's not just you're not just a bag of hit points that you're knocking down. People are actually getting damaged in ways that are interesting. Like, for instance, Paul let off not a fireball spell, like a frost spell, and the critical damage he got was frostbite on the fingers. And you rolled a D5 to see how many fingers were lost to the frostbite, and he rolled a 5. So basically, he sets off this spell. The guy's fingers basically freeze off completely, and he drops his weapon. Now he's unarmed and can't hold the weapon. So it's got this quite cool narrative thing that happens because of this.
Quite cinematic.
Yeah.
Once you've got your abacus out and looked up that table and then that table.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Now, Sid, you watched us play this, and you watched 2 sessions.
Yes.
It's telling that you went back for another one.
Well,
Sid.
no, because the first session I watched was exactly like Steve just described it. There was narrative, the guys hit up a baddie, they rolled some dice, they did some stuff, it played out quite a nice story. They looked like they were enjoying themselves. And I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. I'll just drop in on another session and I'll watch. The second session, I wish I wasn't there. It was not a spectator sport. All right. I can watch actual plays, I can enjoy actual plays when there's something happening, but this was a bunch of guys basically slowly grinding through tables, doing maths, having a bit of what page is this on, 5 people flicking through PDFs, trying to find the right page to look at, working out all their sums and stuff. And when you're watching people and they're there doing the motions, but not really kind of buzzing off it. That second session was like that. Now, a third session could be completely different. So, maybe it was just the 2 sessions I watched. I saw a really good one where everyone seemed to be happy and enjoying it and really getting into it, and the tables and the mechanics of it didn't feel like they were a buggerance, whereas the second one, it felt like all of that got in the way. And the narrative flow that was in the first session wasn't there in the second session. And I think the second session was a more combat heavy.
It was. We basically had one fight that lasted 2.5 hours. I think if you played this over a VTT, if you play this over Foundry, or if it got set into Roll20 so that you hit that attack button, minus enemy's defense, and it does all that rolls for you, so you get that instantly, it'll be a lot quicker.
Yeah. But then, right, you see, this is the thing, is there's a lot of automation in Foundry on D&D and stuff like that. And it kind of takes away from it a little bit. Because if everything's going to be done for you, and you're not going to have that debate of, oh shit, I forgot to add my +1 sword that I picked up off someone, you've got to have that moment of frustration every now and then. So I'm not sure. Would automation make it better, Steve? I'm not convinced.
It would make it flow.
It'd make it faster, but I suppose it sounds very much like if they've kept that core system from 40 years ago. This is an RPG is for people that want to play dungeons and spreadsheets.
Yes. Yes, it is. I'm not going to lie. This is for someone who wants something chunky and, really thinks about, like, well, do I want a spear or a sword? Well, spear's going to go first, but sword crits are better.
Okay, so what if someone that wants that level of detail, and I suppose if you get used to your weapons and you get used to your crits, you're going to have those tables in a much more easier to read fashion for you personally. You'll photocopy those bits up so you've got them as a much more quick reference because you know how you want to play. That's great. Yeah. But that leads me to the fact you've got one book which has, as you put it, as the D&D equivalent, it's got the Dungeon Masters, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual. That means if I want to play this, I've got to go out and buy that entire book, even though I only need 1/3 of it.
But that's common for most RPGs outside of D&D, though.
Really?
I think
that D&D system is fantastic. In which case,
well, you say that,
yeah.
But you got to also remember that most RPG books are a lot slimmer. It's equivalent to buying a Player's Handbook size rule book covers absolutely everything. So it's a difficult criticism to level at it when it's quite normal outside of D&D. Yeah.
Okay.
But it is a hefty tome. I could probably kill a man with this.
Yeah, it looks like it's a big book.
And I've got to, it's all credit to him. It looks beautiful. I mean, they've gone for this old school artwork.
It's the OSR thing again, though, isn't it? It's got that Forbidden Land OSR kind of pencil drawing. It is. I mean, it is very nice, and the little touches in there with all the black pages and the way it's put together it's a nice book. And I was going to play this, but then we never managed to mesh our sessions. But I did read the first sort of half of the player section, and it was written really nicely. It was a good book. It's a good story. It's a really nice story, actually, I must admit. And
in fact, there's a little mini campaign in the back which can be used as like the first third of a full campaign. And it's a really good campaign. There's lots of threads in there to follow and lots of threats, which make it interesting with a bit of intrigue. It's a really well-written campaign. I'd also say as well, it's one of the best laid-out RPG rulebooks I think I have.
Really?
It's got a contents page which takes you direct to the rule that you want. There's none of this, right, well, hang on, this is here, but what about this? It just seems to just manage to write it in such a way that the rule is exactly where you need it to be. So there's very few instances of actually skimming through the rulebook trying to find a specific rule, because just go to the contents page. Oh, there it is, that page. Ah, got it. Which a lot of RPG rulebooks are really bad at.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Free League.
we love your games, but come on.
Can't find shit in your books.
That's fair. That is a fair criticism.
That's Against the Darkmaster by Open Ended Games.
Question, Steve. Have you enjoyed playing it, DMing it?
I would say I was really enjoying it until we got to a big fight. Yeah. Up until that point, I was kind of, as I said, the artwork really inspired. Sometimes you read an RPG book and you just want to jump in and get onto it. This book really inspired me and wanted me to play. And it was just, the mechanics are not for us.
Yeah.
And that's it. They're not bad mechanics.
They're just not what you want.
They're just not what we're after. We're after something a bit more cinematic, a bit more slicker and a bit more faster. Whereas this is, it's cinematic, but it's crunchy at the same time because of that.
It's the detail there, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit too much like what we do for our day jobs. If you didn't run Excel for your day job, on those kinds of things.
Yeah.
You would no seriously. I just it comes back to we want a slicker, smoother flowing combat system, for example, and fewer dice rolls when you don't need dice rolls and things like that. I don't know. I think the story in this is really good and was an interesting story. And if we were to put it into a different system, it could still work.
Well, yeah, and the beauty of it is, I was actually thinking about this, because it's very much influenced by Lord of the Rings. I wondered whether I could drop that story into the One Ring RPG when we all get our second edition of it. Could we just kind of just change the names and think actually in Middle Earth and off we go?
Well, I think the original Lord of the Rings book was an inspiration for it. Because he does talk about his inspirations in that book.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of reference. I mean,
references
it's obvious. There's a lot of it where you kind of go, "This is obviously Lord of the Rings" kind of thing. Another quick point, which is actually really good. The assist rules were difficult to get my head around, but once I realised what they were, I think they're brilliant. At first, I thought they were rubbish. So normally, you go into like D&D or even like a free league game, and you go, "Oh, I want to assist in this skill test," and you add a bonus basically for people assisting. Well, this book goes, "Well, how are you assisting? What exactly are you doing to assist?" And you have to, and the example it gave is like someone searching for something, and you said, well, maybe if I climbed up into a tree so I can get a better look to help them. Well, then you have to do a climb roll rather than a look roll, and it was, and once I got my head around that, it was really good. But at first, it was like, what, you do a skill check, and if you pass that skill check, you then add a bonus to the main skill check, which seemed backwards because you were like, well, somebody's already passed it.
That's really quite cool. So if something was under a rock, somebody might have to do a might roll to lift the rock up so you can have a good look underneath it. Oh, that's quite cool, actually.
Yes, exactly it. So you're not doing the same skill. You're assisting by doing a different roll.
Oh, that's kind of funky. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really clever. And that's one of those things that's gone in the back of my brain, ready for like another RPG where it's like, oh, okay, how are you helping?
Okay, that's interesting. Right
then, we've got a load of questions, so I think we should get on them. The burning questions. James McCann asks, is it okay to wear a waistcoat but no jacket to a wedding?
See, I would say yes, but definitely in this temperature,
no. No!
Here we go.
No, it's simple, basic etiquette, right? At a wedding, you wear a jacket for as long as the groom is wearing his jacket.
That's fair.
Oh.
Simples.
It is a rule, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
It is an actual rule. In fact, I was at a wedding where at the when it came to the point between main course and dessert, one of the people, like the groom's father or something like that, came on the mic and said, "Gentlemen, you may now remove your jacket."
You see, and that is why there was so much pink on the fucking map, because we had rules like that. It matters. It bloody matters. It's the important shit.
God, you must be sweating like hell in your wedding garb, Sid. You got the full print.
And you know what?
Kilt.
When you're a groom, it's your role to sweat as much as you can so no other fucker can take their jackets off. It's like a game of chicken.
Approach.
It's like a game. And that's what it is. Yeah, exactly.
It's horrible. You wear a full kilt regalia in hot weather. It is. Oh, it's unbearable.
Your bottom half tends to have a nice breeze, though. It's a top half that causes a bit of bother.
because you're wearing half a sheep, because it's all really thick wool. It's really nice wool, but it's just wool, so it's just heat-trapping material. Nice in winter, when everyone else is frozen, you're thinking, all right.
It's just why you have to perfect the hip swish, don't you? Just to give you a little bit of a waft.
Yes.
Moving on. Right. David S. Livens asks, what do you think of the Masters of the Universe drama? Now, I'm not entirely sure what drama he's talking about, so I think it's one of two things. There's board game drama, in that there is going to be 2 Masters of the Universe games coming to Kickstarter soon.
Really?
Because the licensing got split between Europe and US.
Interesting.
So Simon are making a Masters of the Universe game, which will not be available in Europe. And Prodos, sorry, not Prodos, because that's the name they no longer are, honestly, Archon Studios are making one for Europe, which is not for sale in the US.
Interesting.
Both companies are known for being miniature-heavy makers of games.
Right.
So Simon have made it clear that they will not ship this game to the EU, to Europe. I was going to say the EU, but includes UK as well.
Bugger.
They've made it clear they will not ship the Masters Universe game to Europe, and I do not trust Arkham Studios to release a very good game. So it's likely we're going to get the bad end of this deal.
Put your cards on the table there, Tudor.
Well, I'm sorry, they haven't. They've got a really piss poor track record at this point.
Fair enough. I am not familiar with their work, so I cannot comment.
Which I think is it's licensing. It's one of these horrible things that licensing is thrown up.
Sure.
So, unless of course he's talking about the Netflix cartoon.
I suspect he probably is, given that it's recently come out, but I've not seen it, so I don't know.
I watched the first 4 episodes. I think the drama relates to the fact that it's called He-Man, but He-Man's not actually in it. It's like a sequel to He-Man, where it's mostly about Teela, which is like Men-at-Arms' daughter. And so lots of people have got their knickers in a twist about that. I've got to admit, I enjoyed it. I watched 4 episodes last night, back to back, and I rarely watch like that much TV in one go, so...
Fair enough.
I haven't got to the end of it. I mean, it's in the end of the day, it's a bloody He-Man cartoon. It's not exactly Shakespearean drama, is it?
Do they have the little moral at the end of it? Like, He-Man
we have not.
He-Man shouldn't have judged the baddies by the colour of their skin. It was rude. You remember those kinds of things they used to get?
Rude?
Well, that's more or less what they said. There was always a really wholesome thing at the end of it. Yeah, there was a really wholesome thing about it.
The Rollistays podcast. Have you heard of at Parigondo, the life-saving magic of inventorying? No, I have not.
They sent me this, so a link to this via Twitter, and they've actually got something on itch.io at the moment. It's their own little RPG, and it's one of these like quick, like silly, fast RPGs, like the ones where you all play bears kind of thing. It's an RPG about splitting the loot at the end of a dungeon. So that's all you're doing is you're trying to split the loot and then manage encumbrance. So what it really is it's just encumbrance management, the RPG. And it's not, I know it's written Paris Gondo, but I think it's supposed to be Parigondo, as in Marigondo. The Japanese woman who goes to
Marigondo. Yeah.
Marigondo.
Fold your sweaters in the right order, that kind of bullshit.
If it doesn't bring you joy, throw it away. That one.
Yeah, that's it.
No, I have not. That just sounds like accountancy, the RPG. No.
They have actually sent me a copy of it, so I might actually spring this on you one week when we're not doing it, because I think Dan in our group would actually love this.
Probably would.
I think it's one of those things you do not take seriously. It's not like, it's a complete opposite end of the spectrum. So Against the Darkmaster, which was like super serious. This is just, you're going to talk bollocks for a couple of hours.
I can do that.
Well, we know that.
many times. Thing is, though, I just take the if it depends on which character I'm playing, because if I was playing my last character from Forbidden Lands, it would be don't share it, take all the loot and leave. Done. Problem goes away. Much to the consternation of other members of the party who wanted a broadsword.
I've grouped these next 2 questions because one of them is partly question. And so as Johnston asks, are you paid for reviews? It seems to be a very hot topic of late. And then Cuthbert Bellow says he's bought Tainted Grail, an Alien RPG, plus he's backed Villagers, and he's got 3 more on his wish list. All of these are from our recommendations, so if you're getting paid for your reviews, it works.
We are not, sadly.
No, we are not.
We all do it for fun. None of us are paid for any of that. I mean, it would be nice to be paid oodles of cash for our random and wild assertions, but we're not, no. It is not the case, sadly. We do this out of our own pocket, in our own time, for fun.
We do get sent review copies from time to time. It's not a huge amount. I would say it's about a quarter of what we talk about on the podcast is review copies. The rest of it we bought our own money. There are some that say that that's payment, receiving a review copy. I would argue against that personally.
Yeah, because a lot of the time we have to send them back as well. And sometimes, on occasion, we don't want it anymore because we didn't get on with it. So whilst we have it, it's not as if we actually, it's something that we play again, for example.
Right then, Craig Turner asks, any tips on getting into RPGs and any tips on maintaining a campaign or legacy game or getting a group together who will see it through the end?
God, that's an RPG in itself, isn't it? Trying to get people to bloody turn up.
I mean, I mean, I think our hand has been forced in a way. The way ours is, but we've been set up. It's been kind of a result of a couple of things. One, we all used to live in and around Malvern, but through various reasons, we've all moved away. Steve, myself, Rory. Actually, no, Rory, you were never in Malvern, but so we were kind of forced to play online from kind of that point forward. And then, of course, the pandemic's happened and everybody's been playing online anyway. Just we were ahead of the curve. But in doing that, it does mean that you kind of save on travel because you don't need to journey to other people's houses, but it does mean you have to get used to a different interface, which takes some getting used to in itself. You know, you get used to not talking over people and kind of getting through, you know, you're playing on Roll20 or Foundry or, you know, other online tabletops are available. But I think the one thing we learned from our first campaign, I think we played with Steve, was that every 2 weeks is not enough. You have to play it at least once a week because it maintains the momentum of the game.
Yeah.
And playing regularly really helps. So if you can, as a group, decide, I know this is kind of one of the hardest things about any RPG group, is which day to play on. There are many, many memes out there that there's this. But if you can all agree, right, we will sit down and play on a Tuesday night for, you know, we generally start at 7:30 and we finish around 10. It's only a 2.5 hour session because, you know, we've got kids to put to bed, we've got work to go to in the morning, we're all old, so we can't stay up that late. We need a glass of warm milk and some Horlicks before we go to bed, you know, and a rub on our tummy. But that works for all of us, and it's just about sort of basically trying to accommodate everybody's requirements. It is difficult sometimes, but also don't get pissy if someone can't make it. Because life gets in the way sometimes. You know, your kid won't go to bed, or, you know, grandma's broken a hip and fallen down the stairs, so you need to go to hospital, or whatever happens. We generally run by the rule that if one person can't make it, we still carry on. If 2 people can't make it, we bin it for that week and we play the next week.
Yeah. As for legacy games, so your board game, I have no idea. I've started Gloomhaven 3 times now. I still haven't finished Pandemic Legacy. I'm halfway through a second campaign of Charterstone. I haven't got the faintest clue how to maintain momentum on them.
No, it's. I think it's the same. It's the same principle, except you can't play well. You can't really lose a player. So if you do lose a player, I mean, case in point, actually, we played Charterstone in our Worcester group, and Charterstone is not a long game. It's not a particularly complicated game either. It's straightforward worker placement. It's quite quick to turn around. You can play the first few games in about 45 minutes each, even with 6 players. It gets a bit more complicated, but so you reckon you could probably get through 12 games of it, which is essentially the length of the campaign. You reckon you could probably get through that in maybe 3 decent long sessions, you know, 3 or 4 4-hour sessions, which is basically what we had. 6 months it took us because people weren't available every week.
So that's the thing here. I think ultimately all these games, RPGs, legacy games, whatever you're playing, you need to upfront agree the day you're going to play.
Agreed.
It's
absolutely
like
right.
It's about making that commitment, and the whole group has to make that commitment, and we do that all through our lives. Every day we're making commitments. We make commitments to play sport with each other, or go shopping once a week, or take our kids to it. It's that.
So when you are thinking of how to get into RPGs, my idea is go for theme first. Go for a setting or an adventure or a license that really captures your imagination.
Agreed.
Something
definitely.
Some material you can relate to. Find something like that and go for it.
Start with a theme and go from there.
Don't worry about the rules. Don't worry about the mechanics. Just pick something that you're engaged with, play it, and if you don't like it, try something different. And don't be afraid to bail the out if it's shit.
That's good advice. And then you will fall down the rabbit hole that most of us have fallen down. Free League, take my money.
Yeah, they're actually very good for it. Their quick starts are actually very good.
Yes, they are.
And their starter sets are even better. But if the quick starts are free. So I think you can get a Forbidden Lands quick start for free, and you can get a Coriolis quick start.
Forbidden Lands, Coriolis.
Cymbaroom has got one.
Yeah. Cymbaroom, yes. Yeah. And they're all on Drive for RPG.
Mutant Year Zero has one as well, I think.
Yeah, they're all out there. So, yes.
So, Robert Compton has asked us, what are your top 10 favourite RPG scenarios? I admit, 10's a long number, and we could probably do a video or something of that later. Actual scenarios which I think are top stuff. The Dimrak Dread is one I ran for D&D Basic, and like it was the first expansion module I ever bought from the game shop in Rill. I don't know if it's still there or not, and I bought that when I was about 11. I've run that module about 6 or 7 times now. It's a really bog standard, in a way, raid against some goblins in a swamp. But it's the first D&D adventure I played which made coherent sense. Everything else was just random shit in random rooms. This is one where someone had thought, right, well, the goblins sleep here, the goblins eat there. This is the room where they speak to the chieftain. There's some tunnels which they don't go to because there's a big spider in the way, and they feed prisoners to the spider. Everything about it made logical sense, and it's the one that stuck in my head. So it's always the one I go to if I need like a goblin den or something quite quick. And it's a couple of really cool. There's actually some really cool moral decisions at one point, and then there's a tomb underneath which gives them loads of treasures. So it's a really good little mixture of ones. On the same event, there's a video I did a while back on making a map in Dungeon Draft. It's on YouTube.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I did the second half of a Dungeon Magazine adventure called Clash's Sepulchre, which again is very generic D&D dungeon. You've got to go climb a mountain, you've got to solve a puzzle in an abandoned village which leads to the dungeon. You go to the dungeon, it's an old crypt and there's things in there, and there's traps aplenty. It's very generic D&D dungeon, but I absolutely love it because, again, it makes coherent sense and there's multiple routes. And there's loads of traps in there, but it's not like a dick. It's not like Tomb of Horrors where it feels like it's absolutely being an arse. It feels like a nice, well-laid-out treasure hunt, because the idea is you're just going to grab an item that is in the treasure hoard. So, everything kind of makes sense and really does work. And, again, I've ran that about 4 or 5 times as well over the years. Okay. The other one I would highly recommend, which is getting a bit old in the tooth now, just because it introduced me to some very cool ideas. Legacy of the Crystal Shard was introduced was published just before 5th edition came out. So it's split into like 2 books, and the first book is like, this is adventure without any stats. And at the time, people were playing Pathfinder 3rd edition, 4th edition, and they were starting to play test 5th edition. So all the rules, actually numbers, are in a separate book because they didn't know who was going to be playing what system at the time and wanted to cover all the bases.
That's good,
cool. That's a good idea.
So the actual story is in one half, and then another half of the book has like different books of stats, and you could go online and download the 5th edition one. And then, it was called D&D Next. But now people have converted that into proper 5th edition, so there's like a couple of fan-made things there, just so you got the stats handy. But what that is really cool is it gives you this quite large adventure to make you it's supposed to be like levels 1 to 5 in D&D, but introduces multiple threats and basically says the players can't solve all the threats. So this is what happens if they solve threats 1 and 2, but not 3. This is what happens if they leave this one. This is what happens if they screw up and all the threats happen. And when it does, it really makes your players have to make a decision rather than going, we're the heroes and we can solve all these. What they don't do escalates and becomes the big bad at the end.
That's good.
Interestingly enough, if you're thinking of playing one of the latest D&D campaigns, which is Rime of the Frost Maiden, it is a prequel to Rime of the Frost Maiden. Rime of the Frost Maiden actually references things that happen in that campaign.
Well, we played it, didn't we, Steve?
Yes, you played Legacy of the Crystal Shard, yes.
And it was very good.
It's excellent.
We really enjoyed it. I mean, quickly from my point of view, I think one of my favourite campaigns, actually, or scenarios, is actually the Mines of Fandelver. It's actually the starter set for D&D. It's only you go only through 5 levels, but I think it's a really good story. It's really nice to introduce you to the system, but it's also quite a nifty little adventure. It's compelling, it's interesting. It takes you through various different places and introduces you to quite a lot of the game world, and that was quite a good, fun little thing. So I've gone through that as a player 1.5 times now, which I really enjoyed. And I'll also have to say I loved Chariot of the Gods from Alien RPG. That was
that is mine. That's my fave. I think Chariot of the God is written beautifully. It plays like a film, like exactly how it's supposed to be doing. And I can't say what I want to say because I'll give it away. There's a really cool thing in it which makes it even better. but I can't tell you what it is because it'll ruin it for you. But
Yes.
it's the whole thing about the way Church of the Gods written, the characters, the pre-gen characters, the way the tension ramps, the way the events, the GM can bring in different events to really turn the screws on the players is wonderful. And it does what you just said, Steve. It forces some choices.
Yes.
You know, you aren't all getting out, and somebody is at some point is going to have to screw it up and kick a door down and get killed. It's a fact.
Eaten.
But it's one, and the way that the material they provide for it, the maps, it's written well. So I've now since read it after we played it, and it's beautiful.
It's really well paced as well.
Yes, the way that they split into 3 acts is very good, which is actually a criticism I have of Destroyer of Worlds. The 3 acts in Church of the Gods feel right. They turn up the pressure properly. Whereas
At the end of each act, bad shit happens.
and there's no dud acts. Like Destroyer of Worlds for me, Act 2 is a weird act. It kind of...
it feels like you're treading water.
And the momentum burns out.
I love Destroyer of Worlds, but I did feel as if it got a bit flabby.
It was a bit big, I think, actually. The map was just too large to do anything with, but we can't tell anyone else any more of that, otherwise it'll ruin it.
I think Chariots of God nails it. Absolutely nails it.
Yeah.
One last one. Mr. Corbett for Call of Cthulhu is from the original Mansions of Madness and has just been reprinted in the Mansions of Madness Behind Closed Doors, which they've just brought out for 7th edition. And we ran that, and that is brilliant because it's a proper investigative module in which nothing is in a set order, so you can go investigate different leads in a different way, and how the module ends is entirely up to the players. So we had the players, one of them going mad and then basically setting fire to someone's house and then almost getting killed because they almost got led into a trap by the individual. I'm not going to give it away because it is a brilliant one, but what is really good about that module is just how open it is and allows... it's not linear, it's not railroady. It requires a little bit of work by the GM just to tie it together at the end, but it is so well done, and it's beautiful Call of Cthulhu stuff as well. It's proper Cthulhu-y and Lovecraftian.
Is that the one where we had afternoon tea with a mad old lady?
Yes, that's exactly the one. Yeah.
Oh, is it that one?
That was
that was good. That one with the flower seller fella.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
we won't say what the end was. So.
No,
I can't remember the end anyway.
Right then, gents, I think that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. We have been Polyhedron Collider. If you enjoyed the show, give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you'd like to chat to us, we are on Twitter at PolyhedronC. We're also on Facebook and the Board Game the Board Game Geek Guild 2726.
We are also at polyhedroncollider.com, and we have actually put on a few new articles, and I still need to release my review of Tainted Grail. That's about a month late now.
Oh, dear. Well, before Andy manages to post that, we'll probably have another podcast episode. So we'll see you then. Taddy bye.
Bye.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye. Helping me unpack it, because I've been playing D&D since I was introduced to it in BSA. The older kids invited me to play. I rolled a nat 20, and from that day it was in my DNA. And then I went and got my BFA. I picked filmmaking and played it with the college crew, DMing in dormitories all across the quad. They knew that guy is a sick rapper. Andy runs a modded brew of 3.5, Vampire and Godfather 2. Damn. But now it should be obvious I'm qualified. I got all the requisite knowledge, or I would not apply. My rules are modified, my bars are optimized. I'm harder than any other artist playing Spotify. Bottom line, I'm the guy running the nerdy go rap past you. D&D on the beach, you ain't heard it like that. Have you serving the track packed to the dirt from the grass statue for narrative inherent, you're certain to clap back to. Now what I'm looking for in terms of help is just a little bit of currency. You've earned yourself.